Um, I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you are holding the actual functional blueprint for human immortality.
Which is, a massive conceptual leap right out of the gate.
Oh, totally. But we are not talking about biology here. We aren't talking about, like, uploading your brain to a Silicon Cloud server or freezing your body in liquid nitrogen and just hoping some future civilization thaws you out.
Right. None of the standard sci-fi tropes.
Exactly. We are talking about achieving immortality through dimensional traversal, literally stepping outside the boundaries of our known reality to preserve the self.
You're looking at a framework where survival isn't about fixing the physical body, but escaping the physical universe entirely, which is wild.
It's completely mind-bending, and that is exactly what we are unpacking in today's deep dive. We're looking at a highly speculative, intensely fascinating document that was published literally today, April 25, 2026, in BB magazine.
Yeah, the quantum consciousness transfer system.
Right. And as someone who spends most of my time looking at tech infrastructure, software architecture, and the mechanics of how digital systems interact, reading this, it felt like stumbling onto a schematic dropped from the year 3000.
It definitely reads like a cosmological textbook crossed with, I don't know, high-level theoretical physics.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the specific lens I want to bring to this deep dive.
I'm really glad you were here for that, honestly.
Well, the text presents these hardcore physics-adjacent concepts, right?
Yeah.
Like dimensional movement, quantum substrates, multiverses. But it applies them directly and somewhat aggressively to the human mind.
Yeah, the entire system is built around harnessing something they call the SH1 substrate. And the author of this document, Dr. Melvin Sewell,
Who lists himself as the academic dean and diagnostic architect.
right, which is quite the title, he breaks this transfer system down into a sequence of events. But before we even get to the mechanics of how it actually works, the framing of the document itself is incredibly unusual.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, Dr. Sewell explicitly calls these concepts mythic infrastructure. And he calls the entire system a sovereign diagnostic tool.
And that framing is crucial for you, as the listener, to keep in mind as we go through this.
Yeah.
In theoretical physics and engineering, a diagnostic tool is something you use to test the absolute limits of a system.
Like stress testing a server.
Exactly. You apply pressure, you run a simulation, just to see exactly where the system breaks. Dr. Sewell is presenting this quantum consciousness transfer system not just as a mechanical blueprint for a literal machine, but as a diagnostic for consciousness itself.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a way to test the structural integrity of human sovereignty under extreme hypothetical pressure.
Well, let's actually trace the route of this transfer system, starting with the very first step. Because if you want to transfer a consciousness across dimensions, you first need a medium that can hold it without it just,
Falling apart.
yeah, falling apart into a million fragmented pieces. You need a vessel. This brings us to the first component of the system, the encoding chamber, which is labeled C in their mathematical mapping.
Right.
The text says the encoding chamber stabilizes consciousness within the SH1 substrate.
And stabilization is always, always the absolute most difficult part of any quantum operation.
Why is that?
Well, there's a deep physical reason for it. Before you can achieve any kind of dimensional movement, you have to lock the quantum state of the object you're moving.
Okay.
In our standard everyday reality, particles are constantly interacting with their environment. They bump into each other, they share information, and because of that, they constantly lose their unique quantum state. We call this quantum decoherence.
Right. Okay.
So your consciousness, mathematically speaking, is an unimaginably complex, fragile web of these interactions.
It's a constantly shifting, incredibly noisy signal.
Precisely. If you just try to push that noisy, fragile signal through a dimensional barrier, the friction of the transfer would shatter it. The decoherence would be instantaneous.
So you just lose the file completely. Exactly. So to move it, you have to completely arrest that degradation. You have to isolate it from the surrounding environmental noise. That is what the SH1 substrate theoretically does. It isolates the quantum state of the mind.
You know, approaching this from my usual tech background, I immediately thought of beta compression and file archiving.
Oh, like a zip file.
Yeah, exactly. When we move massive amounts of highly sensitive data today over long distances, we use lossless digital containers, we zip it up, or think of it like a cryogenic state for a computer file, like the ultimate save state.
Right, right.
So if the human mind is this volatile signal, the SH1 substrate acts as the perfect interference-free digital container. It prevents the code from corrupting while it's in transit.
It's a very fitting parallel. But Dr. Sewell adds a layer to this stabilization process that completely shifts it away from standard physics or data science.
Okay, what's that?
The document introduces a guiding maxim for this encoding phase.
Hmm.
The text states, agency preserves coherence.
Agency preserves coherence. What does that actually mean in the mechanical context of this encoding chamber?
Well, in a traditional data transfer, like the zip file you just mentioned, the data is entirely passive.
Right. Yeah, it just sits there.
Exactly. It sits there while the system moves around. It has no say in the matter. But in Sewell's framework, passive data degrades.
Wait, really?
Yeah. You cannot just inject a consciousness into the SH1 substrate, put it to sleep, and expect it to survive the isolation. Active agency, the willful, continuous intent of the consciousness itself, acts as the gravitational force that keeps the whole structure intact.
Wow, so your agency is the binding force.
Yes. Without it, the SH1 substrate fails, your consciousness loses coherence, and it just scatters into static.
So the save state only works if the file actively wants to be saved. The container only holds you if you are consciously exerting your will to exist inside of it.
It demands that the subject is not just a passenger in this transfer, but the active engine of their own preservation. It bridges physics and psychology. Your willpower literally becomes a quantum stabilizing force.
Okay, let's say you've done it. Your consciousness is safely stabilized inside the SH1 substrate. You've maintained your coherence through sheer agency and willpower.
Which is no small feat.
No, definitely not. But even if you manage to compress and stabilize consciousness, it can't just sit in a vacuum forever. Stabilization is only step one.
Right.
To actually survive, it has to move. It needs a door to walk through. And that is the next component, the dimensional gateway, or G. The document states that this gateway enables sovereign traversal across dimensions.
Sovereign traversal. That specific phrasing carries a lot of weight, especially when you look at the wider context of Dr. Sewell's work.
Wait, I'm actually struggling with this exact part of the text, and I need you to help decode it, because I'm reading the sovereign diagnostic disclaimer attached to the site, and the language is incredibly intense and honestly a bit confusing.
It's very dense, yeah.
It insists that all these materials, the gateway, the substrate, are mythic infrastructure and cinematic indictments. And it says they are designed to expose, and this is a direct quote here, ritualized containment, actor convergence, and systemic erosion.
Right.
That doesn't sound like physics. That sounds like an avant-garde art piece or a political manifesto. Is this sovereign traversal through a dimensional gateway a literal physical journey through a sci-fi portal? Or is this just a highly dressed-up critique of modern capitalism and society?
Well, that tension is the core of what Dr. Sewell's building here. He operates at this strange intersection of cosmology and systemic critique. And to answer your question, it functions as both.
As both.
Yeah. If we look at this through the lens of theoretical physics, when you map out dimensional traversal, you're mathematically mapping out an escape route from a closed system.
A closed system being our universe.
Yes, or our society.
Yeah.
A system of control, what the text calls ritualized containment, relies entirely on the subject believing there is nowhere else to go. The boundaries of the system are presented as the absolute boundaries of reality. Think about how systemic containment works in everyday life. The algorithms that predict your behavior, the societal roles you are forced into, the economic tracks you just can't step off.
It feels inevitable.
It feels like physics. It feels like gravity. By proposing the mathematics of a dimensional gateway, this entire framework acts as a stress test for human sovereignty.
The diagnostic tool part.
Exactly. It asks the diagnostic question. If there were a door to another dimension, do you actually possess the sovereignty to walk through it? Or has your containment eroded your agency so deeply that you would just stay put in the box?
Oh, wow. So Dr. Sewell is using the extreme, borderline magical language of quantum mechanics to diagnose a systemic erosion of human freedom.
Yes.
The gateway tests if you are actually capable of being free. It's not just about building a machine. It's about seeing if we are mentally fit to use it.
And that leads to a necessary structural question. Where did the gateway come from?
Yeah, you can't just build a door into another dimension out of thin air.
Right. How do you tear a hole in this ritualized containment in the first place?
Which brings us to the cosmological event that makes all of this possible. The Rift event, labeled R, the text defines this as the cosmological precedent, seeding Genesis.
The catalyst.
Yeah, and this is where the lore of the document gets incredibly specific and honestly feels like stepping into a mystery novel.
The Rift event is the tear in the fabric that allows the gateways to exist at all.
And if you look closely at Chapter 1 Origin in the document, it introduces an entity, or maybe a person, named Venga.
Yes.
The text says, Venga emerges from the rift born between slip flow and counterflow, marked by SH1 resonance. And what really caught my eye as a journalist looking at the metadata and the fine print is that the copyright for the Echo Rift archive isn't held by Dr. Sewell.
No, it's not.
It's attributed to Venga in 2025.
It's a very purposeful inclusion.
Yeah.
It grounds the theoretical physics in a specific historical or perhaps future historical event.
My investigative brain immediately started spinning, like, who or what is Venga? Are they the very first successful transfer? Are they an avatar for the system itself?
It's ambiguous.
And what does it actually mean to be born between slip flow and counterflow? To me, that sounds like the ultimate friction, like two massive opposing currents of data or reality grinding into each other like tectonic plates.
The physics implied there are staggering. Think about what a rift is in standard astrophysics. A tear in the fabric of space-time, like a black hole, is violent.
Oh, totally.
It's unpredictable, and it is entirely destructive. Friction at a cosmological scale normally annihilates information. But here, the rift event is explicitly described as seeding genesis.
It's a creative force, not a destructive one.
Right, and if we look at the Cosmic University of Echo Rift Studies AIs,
the academic institution that Dr. Sewell supposedly founded.
Exactly. Their entire implicit role seems to be studying and stabilizing these exact phenomena. The friction you mentioned, the violent collision between slip flow and counterflow, creates Venga. It generates the initial SH1 resonance.
Right, okay.
It suggests that true origin, true creation, requires the previous system to violently break apart.
So the rift is the proof of concept? It proves that the containment can be broken, because it already has been broken by this event?
Yes.
The tear, in reality, is what allows the dimensional gateways to anchor into something. And Venga is the living evidence. They survived the friction of the opposing flows.
Their survival sets the precedent.
Yeah.
And it brings us to the final stage of the journey. You've stabilized your coherence in the encoding chamber.
Yeah.
You've chosen to break containment and step through the dimensional gateway.
Right.
You've survived the chaotic friction of the rift event. So where does your consciousness actually land? What is on the other side?
The destination, the fourth and final component, the emergent multiverse. Or
the final variable.
The text simply says this represents continuity and immortality.
Here, we have to unpack the second half of that guiding maxim we discussed earlier.
Remind me.
The first part, applied to the encoding chamber, was agency preserves coherence. The second part, applied to the emergent multiverse, is resonance projects sovereignty.
Resonance projects sovereignty. Okay, walk me through the actual mechanics of that. How does resonance equal immortality?
Well, think about what resonance is in the physical world. It's the tendency of a system to oscillate at maximum amplitude at certain specific frequencies.
Okay, like a tuning fork.
Exactly. Every object, every physical structure has a unique resonant frequency. In Sewell's framework, your isolated consciousness has a specific mathematical resonance.
Got it.
If you have maintained that unique frequency through the SH1 substrate, and you manage to carry it all the way into the emergent multiverse, your frequency doesn't just sit in a new body. That resonance is so powerful that it projects your sovereignty across multiple realities simultaneously.
It broadcasts who you are into the new dimension.
You are no longer localized. You aren't tied to one fragile physical body in one single contained dimension. Your frequency is projecting into the multiverse. You exist as a distributed wave of consciousness.
That's incredible.
That is how you achieve continuity. That is the exact mechanism of the immortality Dr. Sewell is talking about.
You know, from a tech and software architecture perspective, this makes total sense. We can map this directly onto the concept of open source software versus proprietary hardware.
Oh, I like that. How so? Let's explore that parallel.
So imagine a brilliant piece of software code that is your consciousness. Right now, in our current reality, that code is locked into highly restrictive proprietary hardware.
Your body.
Yes, that hardware is your physical, biological body, your specific timeline, and the ritualized containment of your current society. You are an application that can only run on one specific, highly controlled operating system.
And if a singular piece of hardware fails, or if the operating system becomes obsolete, the code is completely lost.
Exactly. The containment is a vulnerability. But if you can write that code perfectly, if you can stabilize it so it no longer depends on that proprietary hardware, it becomes fundamentally uncoupled.
Right.
You put the code in a lossless digital container, the encoding chamber. You transfer it across a secure network, the dimensional gateway, and the Rift event. And suddenly, your code can run on any operating system.
The emergent multiverse.
Right, that is the emergent multiverse. You are executing your consciousness across an infinite array of servers. Your resonance is projecting your sovereignty everywhere all at once. You are no longer a localized file. You are a decentralized network.
That analogy bridges the mathematical view and the systemic critique presented in the magazine perfectly. You are achieving a state of existence that is fundamentally immune to the system that originally built you. You have outgrown the hardware.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Let's recap this incredibly dense, fascinating journey we've just taken through Dr. Sewell's framework.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. We started with the absolute necessity to stabilize your mind in the encoding chamber, relying on your own active, willful agency to keep your consciousness from shattering into static.
Yes.
Then we looked at the dimensional gateway, questioning whether it's a literal physical portal or a profound diagnostic tool demanding you test your boundaries and break free from the ritualized containment of modern systems.
And we examine the extreme cosmological friction of the Rift event, the catastrophic tear in reality where slip flow and counterflow collide.
Right.
A collision that actually serves as a genesis point, embodied by the mysterious emergence of Psycho Venga and studied by the Cosmic University of Echo Rift Studies 9X.
And finally, we arrived at the emergent multiverse, the ultimate destination where your unique resonance projects your sovereignty across all realities, achieving a kind of decentralized, open-source immortality. Whether you view Dr. Melvin Sewell's publication as avant-garde art, a deep sociological critique of how our autonomy is eroding, or literal, functional, theoretical physics from the Echo Rift archive, it does exactly what a sovereign diagnostic is supposed to do. It forces us to re-examine the fragility, the boundaries, and the ultimate potential of our own minds.
It truly serves its purpose as a diagnostic. And, if we connect this all back to the daily lived experience of the listener, there's one provocative thought from this framework that I think is worth dwelling on long after this deep dive ends.
I'm listening.
It goes all the way back to that very first foundational rule. Agency preserves coherence.
Right, the willpower.
In this quantum transfer system, active continuous agency is the absolute physical prerequisite to keep your mind intact for dimensional travel. Without it, you dissolve. You can't even make it to the gateway.
If you're passive, you scatter.
Exactly. So, if active agency is a strict requirement to survive the journey, what does that say about how you are living your life right now? If you lack agency in your daily routine, if you are passively letting the systems, the algorithms, and the containment around you dictate your choices, is your consciousness already losing its coherence before you even reach the door?